All right. And so we are now live with Charlotte Canion on Amazon and D. Scott Smith. I'm glad to have you here, Charlotte. We are going to be able to talk about, and I've got it highlighted in the carousel, if I keep a hold of it, how to laugh from to keep from crying, how to parent your parents. And I have the Kindle version, but you were kind enough and sent me the paperback copy. Thank you so much. And I also got some 3D printed coins. I don't know if you can see those there. And we got Psalm 91:11 on that. And
yeah, I'll have to tell you about those later.
yeah. So, well, welcome, Charlotte. We are glad to have you here on Amazon Live and be talking about your book. And so, tell everybody where you are, and then we'll just get right into talking about the book and your journey and what it's like to be an author and all that fun stuff.
All that fun stuff. Well, I'm Charlotte Canion, and I'm actually in North Texas, a little town called Denton, which is north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've lived in Dallas most of my life and mostly in Texas. I've traveled, and I've probably been in 48 of the 50 states. So, I've been around a little bit. And being over 70, that kind of makes you travel all over. It does.
I love it. Yeah. So Denton, Texas, because there's a lot of Texas. I have been fortunate to be there, but there's a lot of Texas.
They've always told me that you can drive from Texarkana to El Paso is the same distance from El Paso to California.
That's about right.
That tells you anything.
That is about right. So let's talk about your journey on how you decided to write You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents, highlighted in the carousel. And I'll just remind everybody, we are live on Amazon, and you can click on the book and take a look inside. But I guarantee you, if you have a parent or have been a parent or have a family member with Alzheimer's, dementia, think about that, you'll definitely want to get a copy of this book. And there's some great stories in there. And there's also practical advice, but we'll get to that later. But Charlotte, go ahead and tell us about your journey as an author.
Well, I look back at it and I do understand that probably God's been preparing me for this journey my whole life. Everything that I've done in my life has prepared me for it. But the actual caregiving started like almost 20 years ago when I had my husband's an only child. So my father-in-law lived with us and he developed dementia. Within 6 weeks, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And we all know that women, 85% of the time, women are the caregiver. And I was the only female on either side of the family. Now, I do have one sibling, and he lives in Alaska, and he said, "Good luck, sissy." He was there to be on the phone, but that was just about it. So, I didn't know what to do. 20 years ago, the senior health industry is not what it looks like today. There wasn't the resources. As a matter of fact, I ended up going into Barnes and Nobles and I said, "What do you have on parenting your parents?" And they looked at me like I a deer in the headlights. And it was, they said, well, tell us a little more. And I said, well, Alzheimer's. Oh, here we have several books, several. Now, there was 5 books. They were written by doctors. And when I opened them, it was like reading Greek. There was nothing relatable. There was nothing really going to help me because they were talking in technical terms. So, it was kind of, I just had to go by the seat of my pants and, follow my gut feelings. Well, as it progressed, I would find articles here and there, and I know that God was preparing me to be the voice of the caregiver and to write this book. But like I said, the whole journey was 16 years. My mother passed away. She was the last one. She passed away 4 years ago. And she had Alzheimer's 16 years. My father-in-law and my dad died within a year of each other, at about the 7th or 8th year through my journey. And I learned so much about it. And one of the things was patience. Oh my gosh, you have to have the patience of Job. And I guarantee you there'll be times when the caregiver, she's at the end, you're drowning. It's all over. And let me give you a statistic right now. There are 67% of caregivers die. Let me say that one more time. 67% of caregivers die before the person they're caring for.
Oh my word. That's unbelievable. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
Have you
would
heard
never
that?
have suspected.
Yeah, but think about the stress you go through. I mean,
Mm,
here's the person that raised you, that held your hand and taught you to walk, how to ride a bicycle, and now you're the one making those major decisions for them. So it's an interesting tug of war because they're still your parents. They're still, or their spouse. I mean, but they're still someone that needs to be respected and treat them as if nothing's wrong because they're confused enough up here. They're the very first person to know that something is going awry. The next person is the closest relative, whether it be the spouse or whether it be a child. And they, see their parents going that way, but they're in denial. They don't want to admit it. My husband says his dad was able to leap tall buildings with a single bound. He was, the strongest man he knew. He didn't want to admit that, and we called him Pop. So he didn't want to admit that Pop was going down that dementia road. And those of those don't understand, dementia is a big umbrella, and it covers hundreds and hundreds of the aging diseases. And they just, a lot of times when you get dementia, it's because they can't hone in on which one it is. But that's kind of how my journey went along. I learned by the seat of my pants. There was a caregivers group, or so to speak, caregivers like me that were getting together and kind of discussing things. And when I got there, I realized nobody had kind of taken lead on it. And I'm a bit of a take control person. And so my husband and I, we took control of the group and got them really honed in on, what do we need to do for you, and what can we do for you? And, let each person share a bit of their story. And that's what caregivers need to do. They need to be able to share their story with someone who understands. Because that's the other
right.
thing. 20 years ago, I thought I was alone
Hmm.
because my grandparents died, in their 60s. They didn't go through any of this. Our parents really didn't deal with it with them. Now we still have a lot of what do they call them? The greatest generation. There's still
Hmm.
some
Yes, I
around.
see. Hmm. Hmm.
And they're the most precious people in the world. And if you can ever get any of them talking and telling you their stories, it will bless your hearts. It's just phenomenal. But anyway, as my journey started winding down and my mother went on hospice, the day after she died, I got a message. And you're going to wonder why. It was, one of these things that said, now write your book.
Mm.
Now, I think every one of us has a story and every one of us has a book.
Hmm.
But the sad truth is less than 1% ever put it on paper.
Mm.
They
Sure.
don't share their story. But I'm going, okay, I don't know where that came from. And I kind of went, God, if that was you, I didn't do real well in English. You want me to write a book? And he said, yes.
Mm.
He said, we have editors. They can take care of all of that stuff. You tell great stories.
Hmm.
And within, I guess a month or so, I got invited to a writer's seminar. Oh my gosh.
Wow. There's
I'm like,
confirmation, huh?
yes, it's kind of like, okay, you don't send emails. I know you don't. So I went to a 3-day seminar. 11 months later, the book's in my hand. The next
Wow.
year, it was voted the best self-help book in the state of Texas. Then they won a national award. And it's just, it's kind of a snowball, because what I tried to
Get them
do
right there.
was just share my experiences, which I know are a silver thread that go through each and every one of us. My stories are not unique. What's unique is that I was able to share them. I was able to get them in black and white for other people to read it and go, oh, my mom did that. My
Hmm.
dad did that. Relates. And when I speak to to groups of people, I have them come up afterwards, go, when you told that story about the scarecrow, when you told that, they relate. And we all want to feel like we're part of something, even if it's a hard road. We want to feel like we're part of something. And the title of my book is You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying. I want people to laugh through it. I want them to remember those memories and remember them with a smile on their face, because those are their treasures. Those are the things that we will carry with us, forward, that we can share. So that's kind of, how the book came about.
Yeah. It's that is a lot of years of caregiving.
Well, a mother does that. And, if you think about that, we all were,
That's
we
true.
women, we
That's
are
true.
mothers. So we
That's
caregive
true.
our whole lives. So it,
Yeah.
it, that's the other little caveat here is it's role reversal.
Mm-hmm.
You become the parent and they become the child, but you never let them know it. But it is a role reversal. But you have to
Mm-hmm.
do it with such, finesse. I mean,
Yeah.
if my mother told me that that grass was purple, I would say, oh my gosh, yes, that's a pretty purple. And the reason you want to flow with the flow is because if you don't, it's only going to stress you and them out more. So the best thing to do, and I hate to use this word, but it's kind of placate them. To treat them like you would your child.
Hmm.
Explain to them, and change the subject. That's the other thing that people don't understand with dementia. They have the first thing to go is short-term memory. So what you said 3 sentences ago, they do not remember.
Right. And you have some stories in there too. And I was going to talk about, you've mentioned some things like love, respect, patience, forgiveness. And these are all segments or sections, parts of the
Mhm.
book. And you've got great examples for each one of those, for love, respect, patience, and forgiveness, as well as some really poignant quotes from famous folks. And it really makes the book very enjoyable, and it's easy, and people will be able to thumb back and forth for the part that they need at the time that they need that.
I have a lot of people tell me they keep it on their nightstand and they go, oh, I want to go back and read that story.
Mm.
They
Mhm.
just, like you say, it's not a book. I've had people say they pick it up and can't put it down, but there's other people that say, "Oh my gosh, I love to go back and read this story or that story." So yeah,
Yeah, I
just
think
what you said.
exactly.
It's
People will be able
written
to.
human, humanistic. I wrote it from my gut.
Right, and people will be able to relate to the stories, even though it's not exactly their story.
Right.
There's enough variety in there that they'll remember. And I remember when my grandmother was in a care facility and was in dementia. When I would go visit her, I could only stay for 10 minutes at a time, because in her mind, she was just on break from work. So she was on a 10-minute break. And she would say, "Oh, she's a hard woman. I've got to go back." And so then we'd leave, and then we could come back again and visit for another 10 minutes.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you do what you have to do. Yeah. How old were you when you were visiting your grandma?
Yeah, so I was that was in my late 20s and early 30s.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you understood it. I was just wondering how a child would understand. Okay, we're gonna leave for 10 minutes and we're gonna come
Mhm.
back. You know.
Yeah, it was really that would be really hard. And yeah, to try to explain what this is like to a child, it's just without that life experience, I think you'd be missing out.
Well, my mom had. I have 20 grandchildren, and I'm trying to think of how many. About half of them have met. Got to see their nana. That's what they
Mm,
called my mother. And it was interesting to watch their different reactions. And there was I think she was about 15 years old. It was Brandy, one of my granddaughters. She had the most compassionate heart.
mhm.
And when it was, if Nana had something to eat, she would feed her, and it just blessed me to see, now the other grandkids were around there, and they'd hug her, but it was interesting that she picked up on how can I give back to Nana.
Mhm.
And I think there's just difference in, different characteristics that children manifest. She's a very caring and compassionate child anyway. She's 29 now, but back when she was young, it was interesting to watch her with her Nana.
And how do you think that that has helped her in her life as she's grown older to have had that experience?
She is so compassionate with everyone,
Mm,
everyone. And it's phenomenal to watch her in life. Now she's a hairdresser, so she
mhm,
communicates with people, and she actually holds down two jobs. She works at a country club, and during COVID, she was a waitress. They didn't let her go. They found a job for her. That's how much she's just one of those people they love.
oh,
That
that's
that
so
so
great.
it yeah, it blessed us. So that that's how she, I guess, she just gives back to people, and people know that she cares.
Mhm. And that's the kind of story that, her nana would like to hear, right? They wanna know
Yeah.
that your children, that your grandchildren, and in this case, great-grandchildren are, able to be successful and make a positive impact.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and I was just as I was going through the book, and I'm gonna put this up for a second here. I want everyone to be able to take a look. In the carousel, we have Charlotte Canyon's book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying: How to Parent Your Parents. And it is an award-winning book, Amazon bestseller in print, best self-help book. And I encourage everybody to get a copy of the book. This is a great gift idea. It's the holiday season, and sometimes holidays can be really tough on people because they're missing those family members. And to have a good book like this, a good companion, as you say, you can put this on the nightstand, put it on the coffee table, take it with you as you're traveling. But this is a book that click on it, order it, and choose the address of a friend, a family member that could benefit from these stories. Charlotte, I wanted to just, I don't think this will give it away, but I just wanted to kind of read a little part of it here, if you wouldn't mind.
No, but I want to mention something real quick.
Please.
The
Yeah.
hands on the cover is
Yes.
my
Yes.
mother's hands. It's me holding my mother's hands,
Yeah.
and uh, I that was
It's a
something I
beautiful.
I insisted on. They wanted to use a stock photo, and I said I happen to have a picture, and
Oh, yeah. It's
and
one
it
of the
makes
things
it a
that
treasure.
captured me. It captured me right away when I first saw the book uh, on Amazon, and I thought the title was perfect because anyone that has gone through this type of experience with caring for a family member, um, or even been associated where a friend has had to go through this and you've been alongside with them. The title was perfect because we do have to laugh and it is
Mhm.
such good medicine. But the picture really captured me because it's just such a moment in time that many of us, I hope many of us have experienced, just that human connection.
Well, if you're not a caregiver right now, you've been a caregiver, or you will be a caregiver in your
Mm,
lifetime. It
yeah.
it it, it it's inevitable.
I'm going to give people a little taste because the stories are so good, and there's a particular, and I'm going to read the end of the story, and I don't think I'm giving it away because there's plenty more just like this in the book, and this is where a particular man was nearing the end, and his family is there, and it's the train story. Let's
Mhm.
put that up there, and so he told his family that he has tickets for the train and he's got to go on the train, but his son, right, his son isn't there, but is able to come and visit. And so, as it turns out, the father missed that particular train, and the brother, well, the man who's telling the story, it's his brother, so the father's son is able to come, and it says one night I had a dream. And so this is after his father's passed. This is one night I had a dream and I was standing in a field and I heard a train in the distance slowly approaching. I turned to watch it pass and it moved at a snail's pace without rails, just gliding over the grass. I heard the whistle of that single engine pulling a collection of flat train cars full of people. They all looked so happy. Some were eating, some were reading, and some talking to others around them. I saw Dad among them at the table with his father and sister and others playing pinochle, a card game that I had watched my aunts and uncles play weekly for years. He smiled and waved. Dad, I shouted, come back with me. Mom misses you so much. He stood and walked to the edge of the train. Baby girl, I can't come back there, but I have a seat for your mom when the time is right. I begged him to just step off the train and come back, and he smiled and said, I don't exist there anymore. I exist here. Tell mom I'll see her when it's time. And didn't I tell you to dance? I just think this is a great example, Charlotte, of the stories that you tell here, and you tell them so well, so vividly. I think we can all get the picture of that train.
Mhm. You can hear the whistle.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so you've had a chance to hear other people, as you said, they tell you they can't put it down or they keep it right there in the nightstand. What are some of the stories that you've heard from being able to share this this book with others?
Oh, the journey continues. It's
Mm,
phenomenal. I was at a meeting today, and a lady came up to me and she said, "I have her book," and I go back to it all the time. And she's in the industry. I mean, she is a senior health giver, so she is in industry. Um, it, it kind of it's a blessing, but it's also overwhelming because I'll be honest with you. When I wrote the book, I go, you know what? This is therapy for me.
mm, mhm,
And I don't know who's going to read it, but I hope it blesses them. And God has proven, that it definitely,
mhm,
blesses, is blessing them. But I had a lady. I was at another meeting about 2 weeks ago, and I kept going. I know that lady. You know how you see someone and you go, I've
mm.
met them before. And I kept looking at her, and I was chatting with other people, and finally we were able to get together. And I said, I know you. And she looked at me and she said, oh, I don't recognize you. And I said, well, you know, do you go to a lot of these, these networking meetings and different things? And she goes, no, I don't. I'm an RN and I work I work here at this facility and I've been at others. And she said, but I've been here only a short while. And I said, well, where were you before? And she told me. And then I kept digging back into her history. Now, tell me God does not do things, and I expect God things all the time. But I kept digging back. I said, well, where were you before that? And she
Mm.
finally told me she was at Longmeadow. I grabbed my book and I opened it up and I said, do you recognize this lady here? That's my mom. She was one of the nurses that took care of my mom.
How wonderful.
Now tell me that's not I
Mm.
mean, I couldn't help but
Mhm.
hug her. It
Yeah.
was like, when someone touches someone you love, and I don't care how many years down the road, our mothers are our mothers for life. Our family members are,
Mm.
I mean, our loved ones, they're with us.
Mhm.
But when you find someone else that loved them, you know, that you didn't really know about, that you didn't think about, that God just says, "Hey, I'm going to give you this little blessing." That, oh my gosh, it was just amazing. And of course, I immediately gave her a book because I said, "Well, you loved my Nan," and she said, "Oh my gosh, I
Mm.
love it." And I haven't seen her since she's read it, but it's things like that that happen to me all the time. I ha- I don't know if I've mentioned, but remember, 67% of caregivers die.
Right.
Well, also caregivers can get sick if they don't take
Mm.
care of themselves. And I didn't have a whole lot of relief. I literally had to retire at 62, and I didn't plan on that. I had I had the ideal job. I was an event planner for a large corporation. So you know what I did? I partied all the time. I mean, I got to eat at chef's tables and find menus for the executive. I mean, it was
Mm.
the I did not want to retire, but I had to retire to be able to juggle
Mm.
everything that
Mhm.
I was having to do.
Yeah.
And, I look back at it and I wouldn't trade any of it, not the ups or the downs. Because, I mean, yes, it's going to be a roller coaster.
Right.
And there's things that maybe I cried about at one time, but now I can laugh and smile about. And I go, I wouldn't trade that.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
wouldn't trade that experience, like mom yelling at me and telling me she hated me and get out of here. That's a common thing to happen when they get deep into dementia.
Mm.
And I remember somewhere inside of me, it said, don't cry because it's going to hurt her feelings.
Oh,
So I
wow.
didn't
Mhm.
cry. I didn't cry. I just, I kept that hurt inside, and I knew it wasn't her. That's the other thing. It was not my mom that was saying those words. It was either pain she was in, or, who knows.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I went home, and of course my husband, I cried on his shoulder the whole rest of the day, and I kept going, okay, God, is this the new norm? Will I be dealing with this for the rest of her life?
Yeah.
And praise God, that only happened one time.
Wow.
She never went off again. And I hear stories, and I empathize with people that their parents get real angry, because one of the things that we know about, dementia and all the different facets of it is paranoia. Oh
Oh,
my
uh-huh.
gosh.
Yep.
Paranoia is
Yep.
rampant. Yeah, they will see things, or they will have seen, someone that my dad used to see people that had passed at the end of his bed all the time, and I go, oh, hi, how are you? I mean, I would just kind of flow with him when
Mhm.
he would tell me those things. So, and that's the trick. The
Yeah.
trick is, and it's not a trick, it's just, how would you want to be treated if
Mm.
you were in that situation?
Yeah.
And if we can all do that little reverse, I think we would treat them with a lot more love, compassion, and
Mhm.
like I said, love,
Love,
respect,
respect.
patience, and forgiveness.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, that's, so key, and you had, a story in there too about, the bathroom window and the paranoia.
Yep, yep. My dad, my mom's, they both smoked. They lived in that era that did, but my dad
Mm.
had quit, and he talked my mom into quitting, or so to speak. And my mom would go to her bathroom window and, blow smoke out the window, and Dad would see it, and
Mm,
he knew she was sneaking it. But you know what? He did never call her out on it,
mhm.
on the
Yeah.
smoke. And now there are blessings. I want you to know there really are blessings in Alzheimer's, which is where, it's short-term memory and then long-term memory. And, sometimes they don't even recognize who you are.
Right.
But but the my mother, I would follow her in her stories, and I'd go, "Well, where are you today? Where'd you go today, Mom?" And she'd go, "Well, Hazel," and that was her best friend. So I knew she was back in high school, and she would tell me one of her high school stories. And that's one of the biggest things you can do is ask them to tell you stories.
Right.
Ask
Mhm.
them you to share their history, their stories. Because if they don't, they're lost.
Mhm.
Those memories are gone.
That's one of the things I love about your book, and it is a great example. As you said, it was only 1% of the people actually write the book, because when you first entered into this, you said you felt alone, like you were the only one.
Mhm.
And it's so common that people feel like, has nobody ever had to do this before?
Yeah.
And what happens is, um, people go through it and they do learn, but then when it's over, when they're not the caregiver anymore, that they don't take that time to write the story and share it so that others can benefit from it. But you were willing to do that, and you're able to share these stories so people know they're not alone.
And I have to share with you, as a matter of fact, once a month, I go into one of the senior residencies and we have a writing club.
Wow. Hmm.
And I try to, help them get those stories in black and white,
Hmm.
um, so that they can share them. And even if it's just with their family,
So
their
we just
family
have
may
a
have.
we have a comment, and John here says that he is really looking forward to reading this.
Oh, well,
So
thank you, John.
that's
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
but no, the writers, it's been phenomenal. As a matter of fact, one of the ladies that's in the writers group, she she was in the camps when Hitler. I mean,
Oh my word. Yeah.
I mean, but the woman has the most beautiful smile and the most beautiful way of sharing, what she went through, and because she's so grateful.
Hmm.
But yet she walked that walk. I can't even
No,
imagine,
but
some of
that's
the, some of the stories.
and you mentioned that you have how many grandchildren? 20,
20.
20 grandchildren. Yeah. And, I'm just thinking about, because you also capture these stories, these are very personal family stories, although many of us can relate to them, that your children, grandchildren, and so forth for generations down will all be able to say, oh, yeah, that was my mother. That was my grandmother. That's my great grandmother's book. And those are stories of my great great grandmother. And this is so important to capture. And so you've taken this and you have captured this. It captured this life for generations.
It's kind of interesting. Some of my friends right now, they're going, Charlotte, you need to write your life story. And
Mm.
even if I only write it for my 20 grandkids,
Hmm.
but they, they look at all the things that, because I'm an adventuresome spirit, you might have figured that
I kind
out.
of gathered that. Yes.
A little that. I mean, at 50 years old, I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane, according to
Well,
my husband. But I did it for a reason. I'd always wanted, to parachute,
mm,
but they raised $50,000 to see me jump out of an airplane for child abuse prevention.
well, okay.
So, I usually have a purpose behind my madness, if
Yeah.
we put it that way. And I hope this
Hmm.
book, and it has generated other people to write their stories.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that.
And that you're going in and helping people capture these stories. It's so important to be able to grab that history, because We are losing people that had that connection to World War II and all of the events around that. And to capture that from a different person's perspective that's not necessarily news media or filtered through some other agenda, but just to say, this was my life and this was my experience.
This is my story. I have to share you something funny. You made me
Yeah,
think of this. Right now, children are not learning how to write. They don't know how, and somewhere it got called cursive, but you know what?
I
Handwriting,
know.
right?
Hmm.
The real slow. Yeah. Well, I've figured out why. They won't be able to read any of the historical documents because
Mm.
they don't know how to write it or read it. So if we get it in black and white in print in a book, then they can read it.
There you go. Yeah, that's just funny. Yeah, so that's how we can, my wife and I can have code between us.
That's right, because your kids won't, they can't read it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. My son can hardly read a clock with hands, right?
Oh, that's hilarious too. Yeah. Yeah.
So, when you were writing this, I mean, you had gone through just as a mother, then as a caregiver, parenting your parents, and with your husband as well, and there's quite a bit of his stories in the book as well. But let's talk about just the healing process of the writing process. So how did that affect you?
It's interesting. Some of the stories, as you've read some of it, they end up with a warm fuzzy or, something to make you laugh at the end of it. But are stories that I still, if I can, I read it, in the black and white, even though the story's mine, I know it.
Hmm.
When I read it in I cry,
Hmm.
and that's what I tell people. They're going to laugh, they're going to cry. It's a roller coaster,
Hmm.
which caregiving is a roller coaster. There's good days, there's bad days, that it's just a roller coaster. But it was a healing thing for me to be able to put it put it down on paper. And 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 I'm one of those non-conventional writers. I'm not a computer nerd, so I didn't write it on the computer. I
Hmm.
actually hand wrote every word that's in that book,
Wow. Uh-huh.
and then transferred it, and then had a little bit of the editing, but not much of my stories were changed.
Mhm.
They were, you know, maybe a comma here or there, but
Right.
they kept it true to form. And I'm glad about that because it would have bothered me. It's kind of like when they make a movie about somebody's life
Mm.
and then you read the real life later and you go, well, why didn't they tell this? Why didn't they tell that? Why
Right.
they like to embellish, but that's for
Mhm.
entertainment. In my book, though it's not for entertainment, it can be, entertaining at times because when you have families going through mostly the Alzheimer and the Parkinson, I mean, it can be a comedy. It's kind of like watching the Marx Brothers. And you never knew what was going to come up next. I don't know if you've gotten to the story of the covert nursing story, but you got to get creative. My
Mhm.
father wouldn't let strangers in the house. He'd gotten real paranoid, and my mom needed some care. So I literally had to plan a covert nursing action and get my husband involved and myself and a third party who was the nurse to come to the house and sneak her in the house and get her to add, to my mom had a horrible rash on her legs. And, it ended up being uh, I guess I would say it ended up being a story that helped me grow as a person
Mm.
because writing my book gave me a retrospect of who I am and who I was and how I'm evolving as an adult.
Mhm.
And because I was afraid of my dad. He was a Marine, and he was a very strong-willed man. And I look back because I know a lot more of his childhood.
Mhm.
He lost his mother when he was 2 years old. He lost his dad when he was 12, and he was in a foxhole in Guadalcanal at the age of 15.
Mhm.
So maybe that formed the character that I was afraid of,
Right.
So, I realized that at the covert nursing thing, it became a point when you read the story where I respected myself enough to stand up for my mother and take care of her needs, to
Mhm.
stand up to my father when I knew he wasn't totally, making good decisions.
Right.
And my dad, that was the day I knew my dad respected me, and he knew that I was going to take care of things.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned this in the book, but my brother, who lived 3,000 miles away in Alaska,
Mhm.
he wanted to give all power of attorney, all medical power of attorney, all everything to my brother. He's a male. My dad lived in that male dominant
Sure.
era. Now I'm 10 years older than my brother, but he wanted to give everything to my brother. And my brother and I literally had to, another little covert thing.
Mhm.
When he came down one summer, my dad had made an appointment at the bank to sign all the papers. My brother looked at me and he said, "Sissy," well, Charlotte, I'm Sissy.
Yeah.
He said, "You handle everything. When we get to the bank, Dad hates confrontation. I will have you sign on the first line, and there'll never be another word said." So we kind of manipulated that situation, tricked it, because
Yeah.
my dad, was kind of handing the papers to my brother, and he said, "No, let sister sign." And that's how,
And there it is. Yeah.
and there it is. And rightly so, and it needed to be. And
Yeah.
with that being said, can I add something right here? When there
Please.
are big families, now I lucked out because and I'm not saying I'm lucky, but I had a brother who really didn't want to make any of those decisions. He did not want to change his lifestyle.
Mhm.
And he was there to be, he'd listen to me if I needed to, voice something, but he wanted none of the responsibility. There are families that are huge, whether they
Mhm.
be 3 kids, 5 kids, 7 kids, whatever. And what I would say to parents like myself, I have already chosen who my medical power of attorney is, who my power of attorney is, so that there won't be any of that
Mhm.
discussion.
Mhm.
Because I have seen over the last 15 years, I have seen so many families when mom dies and dad's gone, they have nothing to do with each other because they never agreed on how
Mm.
things are to be taken care of.
Mhm.
But mom or if they're able to, before they get into that situation, they need to choose if you haven't done it, you need to
Yeah.
make sure who's
Mhm.
power of attorney, who's medical power of attorney. And usually it's your spouse for a while, but at some point it needs to be, transferred to the kids.
Right. And this is a very interesting point that because you've experienced this with your parents, in-laws. I mean, you have really kind of run many different conditions and timelines and family members, but because of that, you've decided you want to make some changes so that it's not quite such a challenge for the next generation who will have to come and parent Charlotte.
Oh yeah, I'm picking my place. I chose my music. They're not get all they have to do is show up at the church.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I know what all I had to go through, and I don't
Mhm.
want my kids to go through that.
Hmm.
I really don't. And I mean, and I'm not a control freak. It's just, there's no reason, because they will argue about it.
Mm-hmm.
They will have a discussion. Well, they don't have to have a discussion because mom's written it out.
Yeah.
This is what it's going to be. This is where it's going to be. And if you want to visit me
Mm-hmm.
when I'm, that's where you come see me.
So did you? How did that conversation go, or have you had that conversation with them? And because
I
sometimes,
have.
yeah.
I
So tell me
have.
about how that went.
Well, the daughter, she's in total agreement with it. Believe it or not, 2 out of the 3, it went well.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, and I think we all have one of these in our family, could be a little narcissistic and they like to control things.
Mm.
And he said, "Oh, we'll see." No, he just didn't want to listen to
Mm-hmm.
to any of that.
Yeah.
And but the ones that are important, the ones that actually got power of attorney and medical power of attorney, and I put them separate. One is better at finances, and I just felt like my daughter, she's going to make better choices on, because I'm that generation. I have things in my house. Give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, my 16-year-old granddaughter came over and she decorated my Christmas tree. And as we were pulling out the ornaments, and I have probably a couple of hundred, as you know, we all do.
Yeah.
I had a story with every one of those Christmas ornaments.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Me, Mom." She said, "We're going to decorate my Christmas tree at home, and all our bulbs are the same, and there's no stories with them."
Mm-hmm.
And that made me realize, and she liked all the stories,
Yeah.
So I know that I'm just saying that my daughter will respect, because my wish is that of those
Yeah.
200 ornaments, that they get divided with the whole family.
That just creates a whole nother book opportunity. I can just see getting a photograph of those, the little coffee table book, the one that you pull out every Christmas, and here's our ornament stories.
Yeah.
What a great opportunity! Yeah, what
Yeah.
fun that must have been for the 2 of you to go
Oh,
through those.
this is about the 5th or 6th year we've done it.
Mm.
She's the one that helps put up that. I have another granddaughter. I have a village. As a matter of fact, I told you I live in Denton. The Denton County Magazine just wrote I wrote the article. They published it. But I have a village, a Christmas village.
Mhm.
And what else to call it but Charlottesville, right?
Of course, I love it.
It's Charlottesville. And it started 30 years ago when, because I think I mentioned to you, my first husband died of cancer. So I was a
Mm.
caregiver even before, I had
Wow.
my
Mhm.
parents.
Yeah.
He had cancer for over 10 years.
Mm.
But when he passed, I remarried within a couple of years, and my mother-in-law gave me a church and 2 houses. So
Okay.
I had 3 pieces to my village.
Yeah.
My village now has, well, I don't even, anyway, it was big enough that they wanted to publish it in their magazine. So they wanted me to do a story. Now I'm a wordologist, I'm a writer, so I know word count. And she says, but I want the story to be 300 words. You have no idea how short 300 words
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. That's not very long. That's just a couple of
To
minutes.
share about a whole village. But what I've done, and you talked about this as another, is each one of the houses in the village, and the village that has a train station, and it has a fire station, and it has I think it has a restaurant, and it has a filling station, and I mean all of these. Each one of the grandkids has chose one of those to start theirs.
Wonderful.
So
That's
I have
great.
their names are on the bottom of the village.
That's great. Hey, Charlotte, we're going to wind down in a little bit here, and I just want to show everybody the book again. You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying: How to Parent Your Parents. This is an award-winning book. It's available in the carousel, and I have both the Kindle, and fortunately, Charlotte sent me the paper copy of this as well. Great book, reads really well. Very important stories to share. And before we run out of time, and I don't want to get too far away from this little. I'm trying to hold it up here so you can see
Oh
it.
yeah.
We got the little, these are 3D printed coins, and I've got a couple of these here. And then it's Psalm 91:11 on the back. And this is actually, we read it both in the Psalm, and also you see it in the New Testament when Jesus is being tempted. And so you want to tell us a little bit about this before we get out of time today?
I will have to share that with you. The reason I sent them is their guardian angel, as you know, on the one
Mm-hmm.
side, and then Psalms 91:11, may God's angel wings surround you and all you endeavor. I have a grandson. I told you I have 20, and he has Asperger's.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's 24 years old now, but he scored in the top 100 in the nation in STEM. But because of his Asperger's, college, he went for 6 months, but it just wasn't in the cards because he couldn't cope with it. But anyway, he got a 3D printer. First person he calls was this me mom. And he says, me mom, what can I print for you? And I said, well, tell me what you can do with it. And he told me a little bit. And I said, okay. Now, this was before COVID. I said, I want a guardian angel. And the first run that he did was just the guardian angel. And then he said, would you like it two-sided? So the second run had the Psalms 91:11 on it.
Mm-hmm.
Those ended up being my hugs during COVID.
Oh, wow.
And so now I carry them with me. And I don't give them out all the time, but God tells me who I'm supposed to give one to.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott, I'll be honest with you, there's been times God will just say, give the angel, you know, so I'll hand the angel to this person. And it will be a nurse or somebody, and she'll go, oh my gosh, and tears roll down her cheek. And she said, Charlotte, today is my twin sister's birthday.
Oh boy.
And she's my angel. And you handed me this angel. So God just likes to keep reaffirming me with these little angels. So I'm having
So these
fun
are
with
just,
the angels.
it's a wonderful lady print. I love the way, because you can feel the relief in there, and I'll just, this one's got the paint contrast on it with the guardian angel, and then the verse right there on the back. Yeah. And you know, what a beautiful thing to be able to have and give somebody a tangible item. So, you know, because I think about all of those ornaments that you have, and it's not the ornament that's the memory, it's the memory that's there. That's the trigger, though, for that. And and something like this little guardian angel coin that your grandson printed and gave you, and you're able to carry those around. I guarantee you she'll be keeping that close by, and in those moments she'll pull it out, and even in the dark you can feel the guardian angel there. Yeah.
It's just fun. I keep waiting to what's next, you know.
Well, so let's talk about that before we sign off here on Amazon Live. What is next? What's coming up? We're winding down the year. I'm sure you've got events, and I also want to let people know how to be able to get in contact with you, so maybe you can come and speak, or they can get copies of the book, or what's next? What's coming up for Charlotte?
Well, for those that would love to have me, I have book will travel, but they can reach me at charlotte@charlottecanion.com. And I know that's it, they can see how to spell my name. Oh, there's all kinds of wonderful things coming up. And like I said, I know that everything I've done in my life, God has led me to this time. And I know that He has more people that He wants me to meet.
Yeah.
They bless me, and in some form, I bless them back. I've written a children's book. I'm hoping it comes out this next spring. It's called Charlie's Looking for a Mate, and it's about a couple of cardinals. And I'm hoping it's kind of a love story, because it goes back to the roots where families should stay together. And it talks about, how cardinals, they mate for life. So that's kind of that story. And I don't know, I don't think we've mentioned this, but this past summer, I got invited to be in the Mrs. Texas Senior America. And I thought, what in the world will I'll sit and read my book, right? No, I'm not going to do that. What I ended up doing was a senior comedy skit, and I won first runner up in
I
the
was
state
going to
of
say, I
Texas.
bet you did great.
It was so much fun
Mhm.
because I laughed at us seniors, and I
Yeah.
helped people embrace, the over 60. Of course, I'm over 70, but I helped them embrace it. So with that, it's opening a lot of doors, and I'm going around, and speaking and entertaining and just a little bit of it. Like I say, I'm having the time of my life. Helping
Mhm.
people write their memoirs, helping seniors. And I have a passion that adult children need to reconnect with their senior parents.
Mhm. And
If they
that's
don't, they're missed. Yeah.
and I'll just say that as you get to the final part of the book, there's a lot of really good advice, practical things that people can do. And I think one of the items in there is really to make that connection. And like as you were sitting with your granddaughter and talking about the stories of the ornaments, you were able to impart something to her, and that was really a great demonstration of some of the practical advice in this book.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. You got to stay connected.
Hmm.
Because I feel sorry for the adult children who don't live in the same state with their parents, or they live in different states, because they can't they have to find special times to create those new memories,
Mm,
and but they need to
yeah.
do that, and that's my passion is I don't want anyone to regret that they didn't do all they could do,
Oh,
you know.
yes. Right. Yeah. And we get a comment. Phil says that this book and topic are so important because we all may go through this parts of life. And he did it for 5 years. So he says, Charlotte, thank you.
Oh, you're, you're welcome.
So
I'm
it's
just a
been
slow
great.
learner, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Charlotte, it has been so much fun talking with you again. I hope we get to do this again when the children's book comes out.
Okay, I'll let you
That would
know.
be wouldn't that be fun? And to
Yeah.
be able to share that story and hear more about your exploits, even if you aren't jumping out of airplanes, which you may do again. Who knows?
No,
I
my
wouldn't.
husband said never again, never again. Oh my gosh.
Well, I wouldn't put it past you if if you were to do that. But I know people will be enjoying the comedy routine and the books and all of this. And so, again, I just throw this up. We have been talking with Charlotte Canion, author of You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying. The book is in the carousel. Charlotte, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to send you to the green room. And so hang out. We'll be there in just a moment. So we have been talking with Charlotte. It's just been a lot of fun. You have to laugh to keep from crying. How to Parent Your Parents. This is an award-winning book. You'll definitely want to get a copy for yourself. Maybe give it to a friend. Right here on Amazon, when you add it to your cart, check the delivery address. You can send it right to somebody that would benefit from this. Holidays can be tough. Missing family members. Charlotte's book is wonderful. And with that, I'm just going to say to everybody, thank you for tuning in and have a fabulous day. Cheers.